Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Administrator Wheeler, it is good to see you. Thank you very much. As we face this global pandemic, no sector has been spared, none at all. And as resilient and as tenacious as it might be, Iowa's renewable fuels industry is being hit hard. Just as oil has lost demand due to people staying home and not traveling as much, so has ethanol. Close to 40% of ethanol production is offline, and these are jobs lost and lives upended across Iowa and throughout rural America. And my farmers rely on these markets, and many of the livestock producers rely on the dried distillers' grains for their feed rations. And Administrator, first, are you fully aware and informed of the situation facing ethanol producers and how closely the situation mirrors what is going on in the petroleum industry?
Yes, and before you enter the room, in question as far as the small refiners are concerned, I mentioned the fact that this is hurting both the ethanol industry as well as the small refinery industry.
And thank you for recognizing that. Yes. And one thing that has recently attracted the attention of the farmers and the biofuel producers in my state is the attempt by some in the petroleum sector to blame renewable fuels for the recent downturn, turning to the severe economic harm waiver to argue that the RFS is the cause of their recent business troubles, not the COVID-19 pandemic. Are you familiar with this request?
Yes, I'm familiar with the request.
To me, the idea that the RFS is the cause of harm to the petroleum sector when it is very clearly COVID-19 pandemic as well as wars between Russia and Saudi Arabia on oil production. This is frustrating to me and to my farmers in Iowa. And time again, we're seeing these battles play out around the RFS program. It is my hope that EPA follows the precedent around this provision established by both Republicans and Democrats, those administrations, that this waiver requires clear evidence that the source of economic pain is the RFS and not these other factors. Has EPA made a decision on how to handle this waiver request?
No, we have not yet.
Will you commit that your determination will include precedent from 2008 and 2012 about economic harm?
Everything we've done under the RFS program during this administration has looked at the past precedent as well as the requirements of the Clean Air Act and the ever-changing litigation decisions that we receive from court decisions.
So the answer is yes, you will look at precedent.
Yes.
Okay. And Administrator Wheeler, when you and I were in the White House debating those small refinery exemptions last fall, you made commitments to eliminate the E15 warning labels and to allow E15 to be sold through existing infrastructure. And likewise, as a part of that broader agreement, Secretary Perdue was to provide funding for rolling out more infrastructure for higher blends of biofuels. Secretary Perdue put out final rules earlier this month upholding his end of the bargain, but I haven't seen anything on infrastructure yet from the EPA. And since your agency approves E15 for all vehicle models year 2001 and newer, which is 91% of the vehicles on the road today, will you finally eliminate the E15 warning labels as you committed to do 8 months ago?
And Senator, if you remember, after that meeting in the White House, I believe we did go back to you and state that my staff reminded me when I got back from the meeting that I was only looking at the actual pumps, but not the tanks underground. So it's actually more complicated than what I said in that meeting, and we are looking at the warning labels because it also impacts and influences the restrictions on the tanks, because you can't have product going into the tanks that will end up leaking. So we have to make sure that those warning labels apply not just to the pumps, but also to the underground tanks, because we don't want to see any fuel get into the water system.
And when do you expect to see a resolution with that issue?
As you know, with the 10th Circuit decision and the other impacts to the program that's come out over the last few months, the same small group of staff that we're working on that are also working on these other RFS issues as well. We're a little behind on that, but we certainly hope to get through that as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the willingness to work with us and work with rural America on the RFS. It is important that the EPA continue to follow the original congressional intent of that law. Thank you, Administrator Wheeler.